Thank you. It wasn't too long ago. I was at the post office in town. I pulled up, and there was an individual standing in front of the post office with a clipboard. She approached me as I was walking toward the post office and asked if I was a registered voter. I said, well, absolutely I am. And she asked if I wouldn't mind signing a document. And I said, well, what's it for? She goes, oh, it's fine. It's just sign it. It helps people. And I said, well, what exactly would I be signing? And she said, well, this is for expanding Medicaid. And I said, oh, okay, well, that's something that we'd have to have a conversation about because it's not a great idea. And she said, oh, no, don't worry about it. It doesn't cost anything. And I said, well, no, it has to cost something. And she said, no, the government's going to pay for it. It doesn't cost us anything. It'll be fine. Just sign it, and it'll be helpful for people. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. What's your definition of helping people? And she goes, well, it'll expand Medicaid and give people insurance, and it won't cost us anything. And I said, well, and to the point that was just made, when you're concerned about the welfare of people for the state of Missouri, does that not go beyond just the particular focus that you're talking about with respect to whether they have insurance or not? And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you are correct that the Medicaid expansion would create a scenario for us here in Missouri where the federal government would cover 90% of allowable costs, and that we would then be responsible for the other 10%. And she said, well, yeah, absolutely. That's why it doesn't cost us anything. I said, well, who are you a taxpayer? And she said, well, yes, I am. And I said, well, then you are still paying for this, and it's going to continue to cost us a tremendous amount of money. I then asked her, so are you aware of the federal debt that we are carrying currently? Are you aware of the federal deficit? And she goes, well, I know it's not good. And I said, well, it's like $24 trillion. Do you think that's healthy? She goes, well, no, absolutely not. I said, have you ever encountered anyone in any conversation you've had that actually celebrates the level of debt that we're carrying as a federal government? No. Do you encounter people who say we've got to do something about the federal debt, about the deficit spending? Yes. I said, so this is the issue. Missouri right now has not expanded Medicaid, along with several other states. We would be contributing to the problem that we bemoan regularly in terms of out-of-control spending of the federal government. Why would we want to contribute to that problem? And as we continued on, she got to a point where she said, now I'm in a difficult place. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, I'm being paid to get these signatures, but now I don't think that this is a good idea. And she said, I would be probably one that would benefit from this, but this is a bad idea. And I said, well, that's the point. So for me, I think that what we have to keep in mind, we are here for the welfare of the state of Missouri. We are here to look after the concerns and the needs and the challenges of our neighbors, our family, our friends, our constituents. But that is something that goes beyond the mere question of do you have insurance or do you not. It touches on every aspect of life. I've been told, because many of you know what I do outside of this building, that I am supposed to keep morality out of conversations, because when we're talking politics, when we're talking legislation, it's inappropriate to bring up morality. But when I hear in conversations surrounding Medicaid expansion and other types of government programming, the kind of degree to which others feel very comfortable with using moral language regarding the fact that we ought to be doing something that we've chosen not to do, I believe gives me absolute justification to go there, right? I do believe it is immoral for us to promise the citizens of the state of Missouri a program that is not sustainable. I do believe it's immoral for us to promise the citizens of Missouri something that we have no plan to actually be able to pay for outside of debt. I do believe it's immoral for us to promise the citizens of Missouri a program that we know will only serve to continue to create a problem for deficit spending in the federal government, with no plan whatsoever to eradicate federal debt, no plan whatsoever to eradicate deficit spending. It's been said that times like this are times for deficit spending. I agree with that. I believe that what the gentleman said is correct. If I operate my family budget in a way to avoid debt as much as possible, and a storm comes through and damages my roof, I'm going to deficit spend. I'm going to borrow to fix the roof. But if I, on a regular basis, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, continue to deficit spend outside of those emergencies, it only serves to jeopardize my ability to deficit spend with responsibility when crisis does come. And that's what we're facing. I do believe that we need to be compassionate. I do believe that we need to be responsive to the needs of our people back home. I do believe that we need to be responsive to the needs of those that we are even related to. But I don't believe that it's responsible nor moral to look at people and say, we're going to give you something, saying that it's not going to cost us anything, when we know it is only going to further jeopardize the stability of our society. The federal government cannot continue spending the dollars they're spending without it at some point biting us. And that's what we're facing. The fastest growing segment of federal spending and state spending is Medicaid and Medicare. That is a reality. And when we continue to see what has happened over the last decade in that area of spending, both for the state of Missouri as well as the federal government, and we begin to look at the projections in the days ahead, the years ahead, even the decade ahead of us, when you start seeing that the costs of Medicaid are going to put us at a point in our federal spending to where we're nearly exhausting our entire revenue, that is a problem. We have got to come to terms with answering the hard questions. We have got to prioritize our spending in a way that does identify the essential services of the state, the essential services of the federal government, and the way in which we can respond compassionately to the needs of those who are most vulnerable. If we do not begin to wrestle with those tough questions and begin to look for appropriate reforms to draw in the kinds of costs that we're seeing, we are leading our people into a destructive pattern that will create a problem that we cannot hardly even imagine right now. So I am one who has looked into the eyes of far too many people on deathbeds, in hospital rooms, in homes, and in the homes of relatives. I know what it looks like to see the families, the faces of family members who are struggling to try to figure out how to take care of their loved ones, how to cover costs. This is not a position that I hold because I could care less about the needs of people. It is precisely because I care about the needs of people that I have to stand and say that when we look at the management of the people's tax dollars, we have to say no at times in order to look after the welfare of the people. Mr. Speaker, I applaud the fact that this bill represents a lot of hard work, a lot of difficult decisions, and the fact that there is still yet a lot of work to be done. I encourage the body to support this bill and to recognize that the position that we hold and the service that we long to render is appropriate, it is good, but it requires an ongoing vigilance when it comes to measured response, discretion, and a kind of stewardship when we touch the dollars that come from the pockets of every one of our neighbors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion.